Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free, impartial advice on all your debt.
Oscar BEVIS, IFL TV MTK Global. Delighted to be joined by Mr. Richie Garner in the Matchroom residency. How are we, mate?
Not so bad, thank you very much. Yeah, enjoying things here. It's different worlds. It's obviously a different level of professionalism insofar as, Eddie has hired out the entire third and sixth floor of the Hilton Hotel. We're kept in the bubble. It's no expense spared. Enjoying it.
I bet. And I just got to say, you're sitting like to give me that Johnny Nelson vibe at the moment with the backwards chair. Angelo Dragoni, he's fighting Dante Dixon. I said to him, have you got to sort of pull away the aura around Dante and the fact he's managed by Billy Joe, the fact he's backed by MTK, he's got a nice bit of amateur pedigree, because none of that matters really in the ring, because it's going to be Angelo and Dante and they're going to go toe-to-toe in there.
You say that. Dante Dixon's a great fighter. Let's not underplay that. But he's no Joe Cordina, for example. He hasn't been pulled from somebody who's got to the finals of the Olympics or whatever. He's a quality fighter. He's a polished fighter, but he doesn't have the pedigree of perhaps somebody else I would expect. However, what he has got is the backing from management, the backing from obviously the promotional outfit of Matchroom. And when you're fighting in that situation, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's one-on-one. However, if it's left up to the judges, sometimes it's always not that way. And obviously we've experienced that in the past when we fought on a Chris Sanagar show, and the only loss on Angelo's record comes to Christian Twos, which was, according to Boxing News, the biggest robbery in Welsh boxing of 2019. Obviously, Twos isn't keen to give us a rematch, so we've got to move on. However, we have got experience of being, for want of a better term of phrase, you used it earlier, robbed by judges, and it's a real concern when you've got two high-profile figures backing a fighter that perhaps judges or referees in this case will be blinded by the fact that he's seen as the prospect. Well, Angelo has got one loss on his record. It's in a Welsh title fight, and it was heavily disputed. So much so I wrote a letter of complaint to the board. I went to 2 board meetings to lodge my complaints, and I wasn't looking for them to overturn the decision because the British Boxing Board of Control never does that. I was looking for a rematch. I was looking for them to grant an automatic rematch, demand a rematch, but they wouldn't do it. So we've got those experiences of perhaps the wrong fighter's hands being lifted. And if Angelo works hard, if Angelo outworks him, if we go to the scorecards and our hand should be lifted, the only concern for me is in relation to his backing and the fact that the wrong hand might get raised.
I said I wanted to talk to you about the state of Welsh boxing and where you think things are. I know you do a lot for the small hall circuit, but the last couple of months has thrown up a lot of problems with the board, a lot of problems with judging. It seems like there's quite a lot of problems in British boxing at the moment anyway. Lewis Ritz and Miguel Vasquez was perhaps the most high profile of those. When you're in management and when you've got people who perhaps aren't the most heavily backed financially and they're putting this work in, putting this graft in, does it make you think at times that the game's pointless when things don't go your way?
It's not pointless, it's exceptionally disappointing. One of the things that I brought up when I discussed that contest with the Welsh Boxing Board, I was told categorically, it's difficult to say this without a smile on my face, you'll have to forgive me. The words that were used when I made my complaint were, British boxing has the best officiating in the world. Now you're smiling as well, why is that? Listen, let's talk about John Ryder. What happened when he fought? Now, I'm not saying that was an out-and-out robbery. Personally, I had Ryder up by 4. But what I will say is there were officials that had the other guy up by 8. Now, I've been in this game since I was a child. There are people watching, and there's very high-profile people around me whose expectations, whose experience are a lot more high level than mine. Let's talk about Gary Lockett. Let's talk about Enzo Macronelli. Let's talk about Gavin Rees. All these guys were around the same sort of amateur circuit as I was when I was fighting many years ago, a much higher level than me. Obviously went on to achieve fantastic things, especially Enzo, who's the most decorated boxer to come out of Swansea ever. All of them obviously stay in touch with me, and all of them thought that was a robbery. All of them thought, I'm speaking for them here, but I've spoken to them, and they all said it was a disgusting decision. And I'm just talking about one decision there. I could possibly name 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then I've got officials telling me that we've got the best boxing officials in the world. I actually responded to that and said, no, we're becoming very much like France. We're becoming very much like Germany. We're becoming very much like Italy were in the 80s and 90s, when you had to knock people out to get a draw. That's what people are saying about Britain right now. I might get in trouble with the board for this, but God knows I paid them enough in fines and I've been in enough trouble, so a few more extra quid shouldn't harm me too much. But what I will say is this: it's about opinions. Boxing is about opinions, and boxing is subjective. It's all about what's going on in the individual's mind. It's not an objective sport. However, what I will say is this: the level of judging, the level of refereeing, it does concern me. There are fantastic judges and fantastic referees out there. For example, Victor Loughlin, I think he's a fantastic referee. I mean, Christ, I could name 5, 6, 7 referees who I think are absolutely top referees, but on the other hand, I can name a handful who I don't think are that great as well. But there seems to be no repercussions for them. There seems to be no comeback. The board protect these people when quite clearly they're doing a very bad job. And I mean, it's not just a British problem. I mean, let's talk about Adelaide Bird. Jesus. How many mistakes has she made? How she's still officiating is beyond me. I think her bank balance might be quite handily supported by boxing, but boxing isn't quite handily supported in relation to Adelaide Bird and her officiating. But nevertheless, we've just got to do our best. I'm talking for too long, aren't I? Making your hand way down a little bit. Nevertheless, we've got to crack on. We've got to do our best, and we just got to prepare the fighters as best we can. I've got a stable of about 10 guys. I don't train all of them. I train a handful of them, and I manage a handful of them and train them. But what we've got to do is prepare these kids as best we can for any opportunity. And if a fight comes up at short notice, such as it has, they've got to be ready, and they've got to give themselves the best possible chance. And fingers crossed, we won't leave it in the hands of the judges.
Yeah, I did have to switch hands with him, mate. And do you know what? Because I haven't been doing much work in boxing this year, I feel like I've lost that stamina in my right arm to hold the mic.
Memory's fading.
It is. The Welsh scene. So I said let's talk about sort of the state of Welsh boxing at the moment. You do some Welsh small hall shows, and obviously they're not comparable to the small hall shows perhaps you get in England. But is Welsh boxing thriving or not? I mean, you'd know better than us. Obviously, we've got the likes of Joe Cordina, Gavin Gwyn's in a banging fight with Sean McComb. But where's Welsh boxing at the moment, would you say?
It's very difficult. What I will say is this. Ironically, I've been engaging in social media with some people. There's a big movement at the moment. There's a big push towards independence Wales, coming away from England, coming away as part of the union. I'm not sure I'm entirely supportive of that, and the reason I say that, and I'll say it, I'll say it for your benefit, is because I think with Wales we've got the infrastructure with resources, but I don't necessarily think that we've got the governance. The politicians in Wales are doing an absolutely awful job. They've been under significant criticism in relation to the way that they've handled the COVID crisis, and there was a statement made by the First Minister last night, and everybody's just saying he's got it wrong and how out of touch he is, and it is what it is, but that has ramifications for the small hall boxing show in Wales. Now, what I'm told is that there'll be no small hall shows in Wales until June. I spoke to Steve Goodwin, very well-respected promoter and boxing manager. To be honest with you, he's looking at the same in England with regard to getting the right type of structure in place so that he can run a successful show. However, with the way things are changing in England, that might change, but I can't see it changing in Wales. When we run shows in Wales, I'm very, very fortunate to be supported by Mo Pryor, who's an absolutely fantastic man, really cares about boxing, really cares about boxers. There's a fantastic scene around us in Wales at the moment with regard to the experience that we can draw from. I've named them already: Enzo McRanelli, Gavin Rees, fantastic trainers. You've then got great trainers and managers like Gary Lockett. There is a plethora of talent out there that can offer good support to Welsh boxers. And of course, from London, from Watford, we've got Mo Pryor. Mo Pryor promotes, we help manage his shows. Predominantly, I manage his shows in Wales. He gives us a great level of support, and he's really keeping Welsh boxing alive. Especially from our end of things. And it's very, very difficult. These are absolutely testing times, and it's putting so much pressure on boxers. I got a kid called Jake Anthony, an exceptionally talented kid, but at the moment he's got no motivation to be in a gym. His medicals have run out, and we're talking about, to get medicals done in the COVID times, we're talking over £600-700, and if you haven't got the support from sponsors, etc., that's a lot of money to lay out with no fights promised and no small hall shows planned. I mean, Jake was one of the other fighters who you could argue was robbed when he fought Morgan Jones for the Welsh title on the same night as Angelo Dragone, but he's got nothing to look forward to. And some boxers are easier to motivate than others. And Angelo is exceptionally motivated. Jake's got a full-time job as a plumber. Angelo's changed his life to surround himself with boxing insofar as he's become a personal trainer. He's attached to Chris Ware's gym, another great former boxer, Welsh champion at middleweight level. Fantastic, Chris. Gives us a lot of support in Wales as well. Chris Ware's gym, Funky Pump gyms all throughout Wales. He's an absolutely fantastic guy. And we've got all this support. We've got a great infrastructure for boxing. However, what we haven't got is the governance to provide us with a platform, a realistic estimate of when we might get small hall shows out. And as a result, boxers are lacking motivation, they're lacking funds, and they're finding it exceptionally difficult to stay focused. It's just the way it is.
And that exactly sums up why an opportunity like this for Angelo is something that has to be bitten off.
We're very, very fortunate. I spoke to him just a couple of weeks before. Some opportunities came up with a few different organisations. Craig Woodruff fought Gary Cully, dropped Gary in the 5th round. Gary managed to come through it. Absolutely fantastic powers of recovery, and what a lovely guy Gary Cully is. Nevertheless, Craig was just edged out in the scorecards, lost by 2 rounds. But I said to Angelo then, I said, opportunities are coming up. I had a few calls for Jake. I've had a few calls for other boxers. And I said to Angelo, now's the time to be ready. So we started renewing his medicals. He got into the gym. And then literally 2 weeks later, I had a phone call. And he just kept himself ticking over, but then was starting to put it in the gym. So when this opportunity came up, I sat down with him. Whenever an offer is made, whether I think it's appropriate for a boxer or not, I always speak to my boxers. It's important they understand what options are out there for them, because although I might not think it's physically right for the boxer, we don't know these kids' circumstances. He might be struggling to pay his mortgage. He might be on the verge of losing his house. He might have a baby on the way. You know, and I'm certainly not suggesting Angelo was desperate for an opportunity insofar as, you know, he needed the money or anything. He certainly does not. This has never been about money for Angelo, and he's doing really well with private sessions in the gym that he's in, etc. Money is not his motivation at all. So when an opportunity like this came up, where you've got a relatively limited fighter who hasn't done many rounds, stepping up to a 6th rounder for the first time, who has perhaps, it might be argued, been overhyped insofar as he's got a very high-profile manager, he's promoted by Matchroom. Perhaps we could expose this. Perhaps we could expose this kid. And if we do, who knows what opportunities we've got for the future. But what other options have we got at this stage? And further to that, we've got to remember, time is not on our side. Angelo Dragone is 30 years of age. He's possibly at this weight got another 2 years left in his prime. Beyond that, perhaps he'll be in decline, such as is the age ramifications for fighters of this weight. It's just the way it is. It's just the way the body functions. So we've really got 2 years to make hay while the sun shines. And this is a great opportunity against a reasonably limited kid. You know, I know he's got a good background, good amateur pedigree. Why wouldn't we take this chance?
Right, and just finally, a pretty, I don't know, some generic question, should I say, about Welsh boxing. When you look at that, perhaps talent pool, and the young guys, have you got anyone that you look at and you think, we've got a future world champion in there? Like I mentioned, Joe Cordina and Gavin Gwynn, guys around that domestic level, and Joe Cordina, I know there's talk of him, and Jojo Diaz, and he's firing for that or whatever. But have you got any young guys in the talent pool that you look at and think, you could do bits in this game?
It's so difficult at the moment. I don't really focus on the amateur boxing, and I haven't for a little while. Although I was obviously an amateur boxing trainer, and I was deeply involved in my amateur club for a long time after I stopped boxing. At this stage, it's so difficult. It's so difficult because of COVID, and it's difficult to stay in touch. What I will say is on the professional scene, Joe Cordina, absolutely, what a talent, and a lovely kid as well, model professional, absolutely, top guy.
Next Welsh world champion?
I think so. And I mean, let's talk about Liam Williams, another guy who I'm quite close to. Got a lot of time for Liam.
Do you know what? I can't believe I skipped over Liam Williams there, because I'm actually a massive Liam Williams fan, and I think that he's got a massive chance in with Andrade.
Absolutely. Andrade, he could. It's a test. Of course, it's a test. It's Liam's biggest test. But since he's been in Sheffield, he's come on leaps and bounds. He's found a new dimension. I think him and Gary Lockett were a fantastic fit, but sometimes somebody can add an extra dimension to something that you didn't previously, you couldn't previously find, and he's there, and he stepped it up a gear, and he's just blowing through guys, and he's got an incredible attitude, to his training, to his diet, to his fitness, and when I see him fight now, there's just a fearlessness to him which must be quite frightening for opponents. He's got an aura around him now, which he didn't seem to have before. And he's a lovely guy as well, Liam. He's a really nice guy. He's got a lot of positive friends around him. Steve Evans is one of his best mates. I'm not going to tell you what the two of them get up to. But nevertheless, very bright future. Liam Williams, Joe Cordina, but what we're talking about there is fighters who are at quite a good level already and possibly pushing for very big things. As far as people on a lower level, it's so difficult to say because so many opportunities have been taken away from us. I got high hopes for Jake Anthony. However, in the current climate, it's very, very difficult for him, and he's not on his own. There are plenty of boxers out there who are in exactly the same situation, and I'm really hoping that Gavin Gwynn, who again is a really lovely guy, he's a lovely kid, and I don't think he ever expected to come as far as he has in this game, and he's surprised himself, and he's blown away the expectations of him early doors in his career. But I really hope that he can make that switch. He can move up to that next level, and obviously he can win a title because that would make all of his dreams come true. I know that for a fact. But there is a good talent pool in Welsh boxing. And if it wasn't for COVID, I'd be very excited for the future because, as I talked about, it's not necessarily about the boxers. It's about the support network that we've got in Wales with regard to the experience we've got. I was nothing as a fighter. I was nothing. But when I think about the guys that were around me and the plethora of experience, we had a golden age in Welsh boxing. Calzaghe, Lockett, Gavin Rees, Enzo Macronelli. They all fought around the same era. We've even got guys like Bradley Price, fought at Commonwealth level, and we absolutely had such a massive depth of talent around that time. And all these guys are giving something back. All these guys are still involved in boxing. So why wouldn't it be an exciting time for Welsh boxing? All we need is the kids to make the sacrifices with these great trainers who can offer them all this valuable experience and all of these great words of advice. There's a kid coming through now who I just signed, Oliver Didcott. He's working out in Enzo Macronelli's gym. He's under Enzo's wing, and who wouldn't want to be under Enzo Macronelli's wing? Former 2-8 world champion. There wasn't much that Enzo didn't achieve in the game. And imagine being brought up, through the amateur ranks from youth to seniors, and then turning over as pro with the wealth of experience of Enzo Macronelli looking after you. Absolutely fantastic. And Ollie is a very exciting prospect, and he would have been out already, would it not have been for COVID. I got a young guy called Ethan George, very limited amateur experience. I think he only had about 8 fights, something like that, 6 wins, but all 6 of those wins were by knockout. That kid's got fire in his hands, and I'm hoping, I would have hoped Ethan George could have made his debut by now. He's been passed by the board, and he could be out, and he could be trying to knock journeyman out as we speak if it wasn't for COVID. It's been a huge, huge problem. It's been, very, very difficult for Welsh boxing. It's been very difficult for British boxing, and we're just trying to manage it as best we can. But when you've got organisations like Matchroom and the other organisations that we've been involved with, investing massively to assist people and give people 50-50 title shots and 50-50 opportunities like we feel that we've got today, then it's a positive thing. But the ones I really feel sorry for are the guys that I told you about, the guys who want to make their debuts. Got another guy, Inderpal Singh, wants desperate to make his debut. And I got a guy making a comeback, Jason Sillett, 5-2. And, he turned pro at 18, maybe a little bit too soon. But I've been training with Jason. He looks absolutely fantastic in the gym. Can't get him out. I can't have him in a 50-50 fight on his comeback after 2 or 3 years out. All these kids are being held back, but fingers crossed we can overcome this and we can get, football's having a return now. They're talking about letting 4,000, 5,000 in stadiums or whatever. All we need is a small hall where we can let 800 or 1,000 in. We can start running 4 or 5 fight shows. But, and this is the big but, the problem is COVID testing, bubbles, hotels. Myself and Mo Pryor, if we're running a show, can we afford to hire out an entire hall of a hotel? Can we afford to have every single member of the training team, the management team, the boxers COVID tested and kept in a bubble for days until fight night? We can't. So until that is off the scene, then we're going to be struggling. But as soon as we can get over all that, trust me, small hall show boxing will be back in Wales, and all these kids will be out, and it's a very, very exciting time.
Brilliant. Thanks for talking to me and a little insight into the Welsh boxing scene, and fingers crossed for everyone across the UK who wants a small hall scene to return. both in England, both in Wales, and across the world. Any small hall boxing anywhere that we can get it up and running soon. Cheers.
No worries. Thank you for your time. Big workout there for the arms.
My arms are killing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free impartial advice on all your debt.